So I woke up this morning to news that Donald Trump is holding himself another fucking parade. And what I find really funny about this whole, you know, missiles issue in California is how shook this regime is over no kings. They are shook. And the lies that are being spread about who is funding and Soros and all of that, we're going to get into it today. But how do you know when people are weak? When they're moving in the way that Donald Trump and this regime is moving right now. I know. Look, yesterday I was on one. This week I have been on one because sometimes the shit just wears you down. But it doesn't mean that I also don't recognize that they're shook. And we need to keep shaking the shit out of them. Welcome, damnation, to the Danielle Moodie Show. I am so glad that you all are here. Buckle up, get your cups up. Let's go. Hello, dear friends, and happy Thursday. I want to tell you, I appreciate all of the wonderful messages and comments that I received yesterday. There are times, and I'm always honest with you all because this is the place where I can actually be honest, unlike on, national television, where yesterday was not a good day. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there are times when I'm going through the news and you're checking every fucking headline and you're just like, oh, this is hell. Like, this is just getting worse, not by the day, but literally by the minute. And I don't feel like I can breathe. And that is exactly what happened to me. And I offered this because I know that there are other folks who get to this place and everyone around you is just like, I don't understand. Like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Tell me if you have friends and family when you're in a space that are just like, what's wrong? And I'm like, you have eyes and ears, right? Like, they're all working, right? Like, what do you mean, what's wrong? We're living in the midst of a fascist rise. Democracy is dead. There are people that are being dragged out of their home. There are children that are being zip tied half naked. We have Donald Trump's political foes being indicted for nothing other than daring to hold him accountable for decades of criminality. There is so much that is happening, and there are times when it is hard to articulate what is the thing today that has sent you over the edge. But just know that you're not alone. Know that I get to these places often where I feel like I am about to jump off of a cliff. And I had a friend yesterday, my girlfriend, and then another friend of mine yesterday who was just like, you know what? Everything is crumbling, Danielle, but are you going to crumble along with it? Because there are people that are relying on you, right, to be there and to walk them through all of this. And you have got to find a way to remove yourself, right? So that you can still be there for others. And that is kind of what pulled me back from the cliff's edge yesterday when I got out of the show. And so I offered that, and I want to say thank you to all of you for, just making me feel like I am not insane. Oh, breaking news. Look at God. It's like no one could have waited until I was finished with the show. We have breaking news right now, which is that John Bolton, Donald Trump's former security advisor, a security advisor, has been indicted. Isn't it funny what happens to Donald Trump's Justice Department when the real lawyers are fired and or resign? So according to CNN right now, this broke 20 minutes ago, John Bolton, not president, Donald Trump's former national security advisor turned adversary, has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Maryland. Bolton is expected to surrender himself as soon as Friday to authorities at federal court in Greenbelt. I'm reading this in real time. Bolton, who has been under investigation for alleged unlawful handling of classified information, becomes the third high-profile Trump political enemy to be indicted in less than a month. He allegedly shared highly classified information with his wife and daughter over email. So, if that's the basis for an indictment, shouldn't Pete Hegseth be indicted as well? Didn't Pete Hegseth share on Signal to the editor of The Atlantic, the plans for bombing? Didn't he also, in a separate Signal chat, share that very same information that was confidential with his wife and his brother-in-law? So if that's the basis for your indictment, then I'm pretty sure that if I am Bolton's attorneys, I'm going to be like, okay, I'll do you one better. It's, let me tell you something. Donald Trump said he was going to indict his enemies. How is that making America great again? I have no idea. But he just wants to see in the news and sit back with his well-done hamburger and loaded up with ketchup and no taste. He just wants to see this shit. He's so fucking petty. It's gross. All right. So that's the breaking news. We'll continue to follow that. In the meantime, this is what I woke up to this morning, as many of you did. And shout out to Midas Touch for being the ones last night that broke this story that people did not believe until the morning. So Trump is throwing himself, and this is according to the New Republic, Trump is throwing himself another parade, this time with missiles. Donald Trump wants to shut down a stretch of California highway and fire missiles during a second Vanity Parade. Donald Trump is planning to throw himself another Vanity Parade, and this time it might include Navy warships hurtling missiles toward the state of California. California Governor Gavin Newsom is considering whether to shut down sections of the Interstate 5 on Friday and Saturday, as reports circulate that the White House intends to shoot live ordnance over the highway at Camp Pendleton in San Diego. Now, this was broken, like I said, by Midas Touch. Since the time that this story has come out, Gavin Newsom has decided not to shut down parts of the highway because he's being guaranteed. I don't know why you would trust Donald Trump or anybody from this regime that nothing that is happening is going to hit motorists, but apparently he was given the assurance that motorists would not be hit, and now apparently Donald Trump is backing away from using these missiles. What? If I'm in San Diego, I don't need to have the highway shut down for me to be like, I'm not riding on that highway today. And also, what the fuck is this for? Right? Is Donald Trump, pardon me, if you have children in the room, they shouldn't be in the room, but earmuffs. Is Donald Trump's dick that small? Are these men do we need magnifying glasses? Because why? Why do you need missiles to be shot? But it's because they are terrified about no kings. Because if you all have been paying attention, been paying attention to the narrative that is being spun in the Republican sphere on Fox, on OAN, and on these other places, where they're like talking about the fact that No Kings is being funded by George Soros, because apparently he funds everything on the planet, and that there are going to be investigations into X, Y, and Z, and that apparently the millions of people that are prepared to show up on Saturday are all paid actors. Did you all get that memo? I didn't get a text message that told me that I was going to receive a check for going to No Kings. Did y'all? Because if so, I mean, send me the link. Like, I think it's, you know, again, the man is so fucking petty. He's so small of a human being that this is the shit that like makes him feel tough. And again, I just say this over and over again. Real alpha men do not have to articulate the fact that they are alpha men. Real, like, generals do not have to put on cosplay to show that they are generals. They merely sit, right, and watch the spectacle at Quantico that they saw a couple of weeks ago with all of their stripes and all of their medals, because they don't need to walk around, right? Look like Donald Trump did in Mar-a-Lago. Look at my classified documents. Look how cool I am. I'm just like, this all could have been avoided had Donald Trump gone to therapy. Do you know what I'm saying? This all could have been avoided if this motherfucker looked at his broke down family and said to himself, you know what? I don't need to be like this. Let me go to therapy. Let me unpack my shit instead of taking it out on the rest of us. Just a thought. Just a thought. But again, I want to say this. Like, when I say to you that these folks are absolutely terrified of the spectacle that is going to be No Kings, I want you to take a listen to Cancun Cruz over here, and his meltdown on Fox about us needing to, quote unquote, follow the money.
Urging is follow the money, cut off the money. And you look at this No Kings rally, and there's considerable evidence that George Soros and his network is behind funding these rallies, which may well be riots all across the country. And Soros is writing the check. And so I've introduced legislation called the Stop Funders Act that would add rioting to the list of predicate offenses for RICO. Why is that? Because it would let the Department of Justice use RICO, racketeering, to prosecute the money that is funding the anti-Semitic protests on campuses, the pro-open border protest in LA and other cities, and these No King protests. Anyone that is supporting rioting and violence, it lets you go after the money. And I'll tell you, there are more than 200 left-wing groups behind these No Kings rallies this weekend. They deliberately are blind to what each of the others are doing. That's part of how they avoid accountability. RICO is designed for precisely that sort of criminal enterprise. And so I believe the Senate, we ought to take up and vote on and pass our Stop Funders legislation. And
I think that this is incredibly important legislation. I think that I have a couple of people who absolutely should be investigated for their funding of rioters. Maybe Clarence Thomas's wife. You know, the one who funded the insurrection, who got on the phone to raise money to bring buses into Washington, D.C., so that those motherfuckers could beat cops and shit in the halls of Congress, so that they could break windows. I think that there are tons, right, of RICO-minded folks inside of the grand old pedophile party that were absolutely funders of the insurrectionists that Donald Trump had to pardon. And guess what? You don't have to pardon innocent people. Just saying. They were serving time because judges, federal judges, found what they did to be criminal. Now, I know that the Republican Party wants to rewrite history, and they want us to believe that we don't need to believe the evidence of our eyes and ears, just believe the lies that they tell us. But if you want to talk about who should be held accountable for funding riots and violence, well, then I think that we look at good old Clarence Thomas's wife. No, I think that she, by the way, Ginny, I had to look up her name because I forget it. Ginny, Virginia Thomas, Ginny. You know what kills me about Democrats? I mean, there is just so much. But you know that she was never hauled in? She was never brought into Merrick Garland's Department of Justice for her to testify, because that bitch should have been indicted. Right? Again, you want to talk about people with insider knowledge as to what is happening inside of our government, inside of our co-equal branch, the judiciary? Clarence Thomas's wife knows all the dirt, and she used it to help her bus in insurrectionists, to help her pay for, right, these cases that Donald Trump was filing to say that the election was stolen. So you want to talk about an organized structure funded by the billionaire elite and the billionaire class? By all means, let's pass this law, Cancun Cruz, because I'm pretty sure every single member of the billionaire class that is associated with Donald Trump could be investigated. Not, of course, in this current iteration of America's fall, but at some point, because let me tell you something, ain't nothing lasts forever. That's including democracy and including fascism. Nothing lasts forever. And just when you think that all is said and done and inevitable, humans always surprise you. So leave room for the surprise. What a fucking idiot. Like, anyway, I fucking hate him. So, a little bit, I guess, kinda of good news, if we're going to characterize it as such. A federal judge demands answers from Trump administration on following order to avoid violent encounters with Chicago protesters. The sign outside the door said courtroom 1403, but inside it felt a lot more like a principal's office. I'm not happy, U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis said Thursday in a stern tone no student or attorney wants to hear. I'm really not happy. 1 week after the judge issued a sweeping order trying to calm the intense response of federal agents to protests against immigration and customs enforcement and U.S. Border Patrol activities in Chicago, Ellis told both sides to come back to her courtroom to have their own intense discussion. I live in Chicago, if folks haven't noticed, and I'm not blind, right? Ellis opened the hearing. So I don't live in a cave. I have a phone, I have a TV, I have a computer, and I tend to get news. The judge said those news reports were leading her to believe the Trump administration may not be following her instructions. I mean, really? At least from what I'm seeing, I'm having serious concerns that my orders aren't being followed. In response, Ellis announced Thursday she will expand her restraining order, requiring all federal agents who are part of Operation Midway Blitz and who have body cameras to have them on during encounters with protesters. So here's my thing. Here's my thing about this, right? So first off, again, I said this on Threads the other day in response to a press conference that Governor Pritzker was speaking at, right? Where he said, this is not the, Illinois. I know this is not the Illinois way, and decrying the ICE operations there in Christie Nome. And here's what I said. You are not powerless in this situation, right? You can do more than empty platitudes. You can pass an executive order, for instance, that says that no law enforcement officials in the state of Illinois should be able to conceal their identity. Badges must be present with first name, last name, and badge numbers, and faces must remain not concealed, masks off, right? You can also state that you're not allowed to ride around in the state of Illinois without ghost plates on, because what we know is that these motherfuckers are operating with fake license plates, or none at all. They're also using budget and U-Haul vans in order to haul off people who are largely citizens that they are picking up off of the street, who are black and brown, shoving them into a fucking van that is designated to move furniture, right? That is now trafficking people. So again, I would pass an executive order that I know that U-Haul and Budget are private industries, or private businesses, but you have to use every single tool in your toolbox, right? And if he does not have a favorable state government that is on his side to readily pass legislation and call an emergency session, then what are you doing with your executive powers? Because to simply sit by and allow mass agents to run around at Walgreens to pick up people at whim, people who are telling you, look in my backpack, as one black man did who was being interviewed by Don Lemon recently, when Don Lemon was in Chicago for several days, and he was allowing for this black man to be able to tell his story of being picked up by ICE. And he was saying the entire time, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen. Check my backpack. I have my papers in there. And what did they say to this man? Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. And they ushered him out of his building into a U-Haul that he said was packed with at least 60 people. And what did they all have in common? They were black and they were brown. When they were brought to whatever detention center that they were brought to, the man again is saying, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen. Check my backpack. He said that finally he was released with no paperwork, right? So they're just picking people up, terrorizing entire communities. They're not entering your name into any paperwork. They're not using a fucking Excel spreadsheet. They're not using a Google fucking sheet. Release them, open the gates, and don't even provide transportation back to where they were. This is terrorism. This is terrorism. There's no Operation Midway Blitz. This is terrorism. Because any operation has actual plans, right? Has an actual strategy beyond just cosplaying G.I. Joe and rappelling down from a Black Hawk helicopter. Much in the same way that they were separating children from their families in the first Trump regime without so much as writing down a first and last name and maybe a fucking contact phone number. There are hundreds of kids that are still separated from their parents. And you know what I always find interesting, and I like to connect the dots for folks, that during the first Trump regime, do you know what else they were doing while they were separating children from their families? They were also passing legislation in red states that would roll back child worker protection laws. Why do you think that is? They also were passing legislation that would lower the age for consent in marriage. Why do you think that is? You know what, folks? Connect the dots. They were separating those kids from their families, putting them to work. Slave labor, nobody knows where they are. Nobody knows who they are. They're either trafficked for sex work, trafficked to work at these disgusting plants, right? With no recourse whatsoever. It was not a coincidence that laws were being changed to roll back protections for children right at the time that Donald Trump was throwing brown children in cages. But I don't remember ever seeing any investigative reporting on that. Do you? I don't remember hearing any stories about how these children have been united and accounted for with their families. Do you? Do you know how many fucked up Christian cults there are in this country? Do you know how many times I see stories of sick, twisted, white evangelical Christians that adopt Black and brown children to later find out that they were using them as slave labor? All I have to say is that this is a party who is telling you in your face that they would rather protect pedophiles than anything else, that they would shut down the government just so that they don't have to release the Epstein files, so that they don't have to swear in Adelita Grijalva, the 218th vote for the discharge petition. They would rather burn this country to the ground than hand over pedophiles that are in their own party. Think about that. Think about how fucking sick that is. These are the same people that made up all types of conspiracies that led to bomb threats and murders about Democrats being pedophiles. And we know that all of this shit is projection because, my God, if you type in to Google Republicans, pedophiles, elected officials, pastors, there are multiple recent stories of people in Donald Trump's circle that have been arrested, indicted for molesting children. But we don't connect those dots. And a matter of fact, Democrats don't even work to exploit that shit and say, what kind of party is this? You've called yourself for my entire life the party of family values. Is this part of your value? Pedophilia is not a partisan issue, but Republicans have made it one. What does that say about them? Nonetheless, that's where we are. So yesterday, speaking of the government shutdown, both Bernie Sanders and AOC appeared on CNN to talk about the government shutdown and where they think that it is headed. I'm going to play you this clip. And of course, it won't play, so we will do it like this. 1 second, please. Take a listen.
Obviously, open enrollment starts November 1st. Over in the House, there are 14 House Republicans who have said that they will sign on and they will vote for a one-year extension of the subsidies. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said he thought that proposal was laughable. Do you think that's laughable, or is that something you could get behind?
Yeah, no, let me tell you why it's laughable, because it's cynical. Republicans want to sign on to just a one little extra year of these ACA subsidies. You want to know why? What's happening next year? Midterm elections. They want to extend these subsidies just a year extra so that people don't realize the dupe that they are pulling on everyone, so that they can all reelect themselves and allow those things to expire the moment that they win reelection. And it is time to get politics out of what should be a guaranteed universal right in the United States of America, and that is health care. And so I will not accept a measly one-year acceptance of a measly one-year extension of the ACA. We need to make sure, and as a member of the party, we put negotiations in the hands of our party's leadership with Hakeem Jeffries. He says it's no, it's no. And we have to make sure that we are expanding and continuing the fight and not falling for the fine print, not falling for the tricks, and not falling for the politics around this.
100%. Because the fact of the matter is, right, Republicans have tried to place this government shutdown at the doorstep of the Democratic Party. And the fact of the matter is that, no, you have decided that you don't give a shit about your constituents, a majority of which use ACA. I showed you the clip yesterday from CNN. Who is enrolled in the marketplace at a higher percentage than Democrats? Republicans, 45% to 35%, right? Are utilizing the ACA. This is why Marjorie Taylor Greene is on her rebrand shit right now, because she's hearing from her constituents and she knows where the wind is blowing. Republicans, this is a losing issue. The ACA was never about, oh, we're going to get Democrats on healthcare. It was about getting everyone on healthcare. And it's something legit universal that causes a lot of expense and a lot of pain in this country, is our shit healthcare system. And so what are Democrats saying? We're not going to allow you to rob Peter to pay Paul. We are not going to allow you to bankrupt Medicaid and Medicare so that you can pay out your billionaire donors with the funds needed to provide health care to Americans. We're not going to do it. And I'm telling you, we are the only supposedly developed nation that does not have quality health care that is universal, because they want to tell us that that's socialism. Is it socialism in all of the other high-income countries? No. They know that having a healthy workforce actually works to their benefit. But America doesn't love sense. And, you know, this is funny because Brian Krasenstein says AOC is running for president, no doubt about it. I don't know if AOC is going to run for president. I have no idea. But I do know that I listen when she speaks, because I do know that she is a politician that, since she has come into office, has stood real firm, 10 toes down in her values. And that is an anomaly in Washington, D.C. So take a listen to her here about a question that was asked: do Democrats need to improve their social media messaging? And she talks about the ways in which Republicans have been successful and why.
And it is clear to communicate that as an individual. Now, to the question earlier as well, when they talk about Republicans and their success online, they have been successful because they have also been very clear, especially digitally, about what they believe. That women are inferior, they do not deserve equal rights, that they believe that LGBTQ Americans are subhuman, that they believe and are circulating disgusting racial and white supremacist messaging that they are able to get away with digitally and online. And they are able to radicalize and target and exploit a generation of young boys, in particular, away from healthy masculinity and into an insecure masculinity that requires the domination of others who are poorer, browner, darker, or a different gender than them. And that is why they are resonating online, because they are appealing to the most basest and worst parts of human nature to divide us. And why to divide us? So that the same people who own those platforms, people like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Zuckerberg, that these people can continue to get away with highway robbery in tax cuts and in order to fleece all of our pockets, cut our health care, keep our wages low so that we remain fighting amongst ourselves while they make themselves richer. And so in order for us to fight back against that, we must be clear about what we believe, have strong beliefs, and also be completely unwilling to bow to that kind of division and stand in solidarity with one another, especially when it is someone whose culture is different from ours or whose background we may not entirely understand, but that we honor, love, and see as our fellow Americans.
I mean, she makes it look easy. Why is it so difficult for Democrats to have clear, concise messaging? To have a counter to what is clearly Republicans catering to the worst among us. They have infiltrated, and I did a special about this before, if you all remember. I ended my podcast, Woke AF Daily, at the end of last year. But before I ended that podcast, one of the last episodes that I did was with my former producer, who is a big gamer, and talking about the ways in which the right wing had been infiltrating gaming, the gaming world and gaming culture that is largely male, right? Young and white, and been sprinkling and planting seeds of misogyny, of homophobia, of transphobia, etc. with these young people who are deficient when it comes to their ability to connect in real life. So they don't talk to each other. They don't connect with one another in real life. And right-wing media has been their way, right, to create these incel babies. These Nick Fuentes Juniors who are angry, alone, and in their parents' basements. And instead of figuring out the counter narrative to that, the expression of what positive masculinity can actually look like, right? Like men, straight men, or queer men that take care of their families, love each other, right? Like there is a difference. When you looked at, for instance, if you all remember, from the DNC, from convention last summer. Remember Tim Walz's son? And him crying and saying, like, that's my dad, that's my dad. And the loving way with which his father recognized him. The way in which, right, Kamala Harris's husband, Doug, stands by and with and up for his wife. I just saw the other day, and this went viral. And this is an example outside of politics. For all of you who are sports folks, Stephen A. Smith, back during the Super Bowl of 2024, or what was it, 2025, right? Had the audacity to talk about Serena Williams and her dancing, crip walking with Kendrick Lamar. Stephen A. is on television because all he does is talk bad about Black women, right? He's never met a Black woman that he doesn't want to disparage. And so most recently, Serena Williams' billion-dollar husband was on air because he had just done an event with Athlos, right? His track and field entertainment company that just hosted an event in New York City. And so he says to Stephen A., you had something to say about my wife? Remind me again. You're not married, are you? You don't have a partner. Right? And here is this, again, white man who is standing up for his wife, raising his two daughters to be powerful women. These are people who show you, right, that standing up and for your wife and loving your kids, seeing them as equal, seeing them as champions, seeing them as great, doesn't come at a deficit to you. And so how is it that Democrats couldn't figure out and still can't figure out how to run campaigns and have conversations that aren't just with young men, but young people about what it means, right, to be in right relationship with one another? There are all of these fucking articles that have been coming out that say, oh God, you know, men are moving further to the right and they're complaining that they can't find women. You can't find women because you're moving further to the right. And women don't want to live with a caveman. They want to live with a partner. And so who is teaching young men how to be partners? And instead of doing that, what are we getting? The cosplaying of masculinity, the warrior talk by Keg's Breath on fucking stage to actual warriors. You get the grab them by the pussy. You get all of these motherfuckers who are so disgusting. And that is who young men are modeling their lives after, and then wondering why they can't get a girl. Because you're an asshole. That's why. And no one has taught you how to actually be a good man. So I'm like, I listen to AOC here, and I'm just like, this is not rocket science. And yet you have members inside of your party, like a Zoran Mamdani, who is doing wonders right now with younger voters, male voters. There are like young political influencers who are out there, again, being a counter voice to who was the Charlie Kirks and who is now the Nick Fuenteses of the world. Elevate them. It's not that hard. Meanwhile, while all of this is happening, right? While all of this is going on, while Donald Trump is getting ready to have his little military parade, his small parade, as a show of force, as he's saying, right? As a show of force, military force before the No Kings rally that clearly has them all shook. You know what's going on with our shell of a government? Just a little stuff that is being ignored, like how FEMA is forcing disaster-struck towns to fend for themselves because there is no FEMA. And what makes me wonder is, where's that money gone? So the New York Times writes this: life is inching back to normal in the town of Cave City, 7 months after a tornado slammed into its corner of northeastern Arkansas. The only grocery store is about to reopen. Crews are starting to dig the foundation for a rebuilt funeral home. But the town, like so many others facing daunting recoveries from recent disaster, has had to go it alone, Mayor Jonas Anderson said. The Trump administration denied Cave City's request. This is in Arkansas, folks. This is a red fucking state, redder than red. But y'all voted for this, right? Denied Cave City's request for Federal Emergency Management Agency money to help it recover. Anderson was forced to forge ahead anyway, racking up a bill of about $300,000 he said could end up eating 15% of the small town's annual budget. Some of the nearly 2,000 residents have gotten federal help. FEMA agreed to cover repairs to the more than 50 homes damaged or destroyed when 165-mile-per-hour winds struck in March. The states pledged relief money too, but Mr. Anderson had said Cave City is carrying more of the burden of recovery than expected. They go on to say this: this could be the future for more communities across the country, based on Mr. Trump's vision for emergency management in the United States, one that would transfer responsibility for disaster recovery from the federal government to the states in all but the largest catastrophes. FEMA has been delaying disaster declarations and aid payments to communities, aiding new hurdles to access some grant funds. and cutting off the flow of money intended to boost resilience and prevent future disasters from causing so much damage. I want to ask you this. Have you ever traveled on holiday, on vacation to Caribbean islands? Caribbean islands that have like a low GDP, who are always in the path of some type of hurricane, typhoon, etc. And you go and you're traveling around, and particularly if you leave out of the resort areas, you see devastation. You see devastation, people whose houses have been ripped apart and who are now abandoned because they don't have the money, they don't have the resources, because you know what? They don't have a FEMA to help them rebuild. And so those places that have been ravaged by natural disasters just remain that way until, of course, the real estate vultures come in, buy up their land, and then build resorts that continue to extract from the island, taking away from the people that are there, but, you know, building up the wealth of the Hiltons and the this and the that of the world. That is what is going to happen in the United States. It is already happening. That you are going to go around into different areas that are hit by hurricanes, hit by fires, hit by tornadoes, unable to rebuild, all becoming devastated areas that then are left for the vultures to come in and gobble up, while the people have to leave, abandon their places, and go and find higher ground, new places to live. This is what Donald Trump wants. I remember, right? I went to Detroit, I think once or twice. I went to Detroit, and, you know, you had seen all of the just, I mean, it looked like a zombie apocalypse. Fire stations with trees growing in the middle of them, whole towns, whole areas of Detroit completely and totally abandoned. Why? Because when the auto industry left, there were no jobs. And it just became this zombie city. That is what is going to happen around the country. And guess what? Climate change is getting worse. The storms are getting worse. And what happens when they get worse, they also become more expensive. So these states and these little podunk towns don't have the money. And again, I ask, what the fuck are we paying taxes for? Because if none of it is actually going back to us to help us in our fucking time of need, to provide health care for those that can't afford, to fund our public schools, to fix our roads and bridges, then what exactly are we paying taxes for? These are the questions that people need to start asking themselves as they begin to realize that the money that they are putting in, that they are giving to the government, isn't actually returning to them. Speaking of which, more bad news. While Donald Trump prepares for his next Vanity Parade, another industry is being hit by his bullshit policies. Truckers are struggling. Trump's new tariff could make things worse. Companies involved in transporting goods into and around the United States are bracing for another tariff, this time on trucks. Trump is planning to impose a 25% tariff on medium and heavy-duty trucks and truck parts on November 1st. The Trump administration has released almost no details, creating confusion among truck makers and truckers and prompting much lobbying to try to shape the final policy. If few exemptions are granted, industry analysts say the tariff could raise the cost of manufacturing trucks and repairing old ones. You know, those things that are like kind of necessary to move our goods around. Yeah, we won't be able to do that. Folks, I ask you this. Name one thing that this regime has done over the last 10 months that has helped the American people. Name one policy that they have rolled out that has been of benefit to even their base. Every single fucking thing that they have done has been about causing more economic pain, terrorism, adding to climate change. Like they have literally, I think about it, I'm just like, what have they done that is good? Name me something, name one thing. Like everyone really think about it. What is the one thing that this regime has done that we could say, well, that's at least benefiting the American people? There isn't one. There isn't one. And then on top of which, this was the other news this morning. Trump eyes changes at the IRS that would make weaponization far easier. Again, by the way, collecting our taxes to do what exactly? And you want to talk about, Danielle, what do you think we should do with regard to a national strike? Add withholding our taxes to the list, because I don't really know why I'm paying them. And like I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm independent. I pay my taxes, a lot of them, because as much as America wants to talk about people pulling themselves up from their bootstraps and how we love small businesses and X, Y, and Z, I'm taxed like I'm a fucking millionaire, which, by the way, totally not. But the amount of taxes that I pay would make most of you throw up. And I'm sitting around as I just paid my tax bill in September, getting ready to pay again in January. And I'm thinking to myself, why? What am I getting in return? I'm fine with paying taxes when I know that it's going to help this country. But if all I'm doing is helping Donald Trump open another gaudy fucking country club or help his stupid son fill his pockets with meme coins, fuck that. So it's been a difficult year for the IRS because most of them were fired. Over the past several months, the tax agency has struggled with resignations, DOJ-imposed disruptions, and the abandonment of much-needed modernization initiatives. Complicating matters, there has been a revolving door at the IRS administration's office. 7 different people have led the... Folks, 7 different people have led the agency over the last 10 months, including the current IRS chief, Scott Bessent, who already has a full-time job, by the way, leading the Treasury Department. Bessent recently created a new job, the CEO of the Internal Revenue Service, and filled the vacancy with Frank Bisignio. Of course, Bisignio also already has a full-time job running the Social Security Administration. So does this mean that they just all create new jobs for themselves so that they can cut different checks for themselves? Because that's what this shit sounds like to me. You think these people are taking one check for one job? I don't think so. But just because things are awful at the IRS doesn't mean conditions can't get worse, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Trump administration is preparing sweeping changes at the IRS that would allow the agency to pursue criminal inquiries of left-leaning groups more easily, according to people familiar with the matter. A senior IRS official involved in the efforts has drawn up a list of potential targets that includes Democratic donors, some people have said. So what is Donald Trump doing? He's stealing your Social Security number. He's stealing your tax dollars, lining his pockets with it. And then for those organizations that have always followed the rule of law, unlike those inside of the GOP, he's going to rewrite the laws so that it looks like they're breaking it, so that he can throw those people in jail or shutter those organizations altogether so that we can't fund a resistance. One of the first signs of trouble came 6 months ago when the Washington Post reported that the Republican administration was amassing influence over criminal investigations at the IRS. The Post added in April that developments at the tax agency gave Trump political appointees, quote, a direct line to tax investigations for the first time since Richard M. Nixon was president. What could possibly go wrong? So, on top of all of this that is happening while we are paying attention to Donald Trump dropping bombs on, fishermen in Venezuela, Donald Trump indicting his political opponents, Donald Trump wanting to shoot missiles as a show of force because he's scared of people with the ability to protest, while he is weaponizing the military against the people of these United States, while he is bankrupting farmers and truckers. Oh, that's right. The U.S. Labor Department warns also of a potential food crisis, folks, linked to Trump's immigration raids. Just when you think things can't get worse, guess what? They fucking do. The U.S. Labor Department is warning of a potential food crisis linked to Trump's immigration raids, and one family-owned farm is caught in the middle. And I refuse to use the terms that they use here, so forgive me. The near total cessation of the inflow of undocumented people, combined with the lack of an available legal workforce, results in significant disruptions to production costs and threatening the stability of domestic food production and prices for U.S. consumers. What does that mean? Oh, you all thought that you were going to kidnap, traffic, and place hardworking, undocumented people in jail, undocumented people, take them from their jobs. And you thought for some reason that, who was going to do that labor? Was it going to be Chad and Chet at the country club? Did you think that white men were going to be running to these jobs that folks, how they love to say that the immigrants are stealing your jobs? Well, now all these jobs are wide open. And for some reason, we're about to head into a food crisis. Because guess what? No one wants to fucking do them. So this produce farm, a third-generation agriculture business in Idaho, is now facing worker shortages in the wake of the Trump administration's increasing deportation rates. Shay Myers of OE's produce general manager said the farm typically has 300 workers at peak harvesting times, with roughly 82 H-2A visa employees who are temporary seasonal agriculture workers from abroad. We would love to hire people from here, they said. The reality is, we can't find the numbers of the people here. We're in a rural area, number one. Number two, this is hard work. It's difficult work. And there are lots of people that are not willing to do it. Doesn't that sound familiar? Ah, that's right. That's why the slave trade was started. Because you see, white people didn't want to do hard work, the hard work of building this country. So instead, right, they went and got ships and enslaved millions of Black Africans, brought them to this country, tortured them to death as they worked to build this country. Because the labor was hard. And so now, when slavery is kind of outlawed, but you can look at our carceral state to see how it actually still works. And what I believe that Donald Trump and this regime is going to do is criminalize Black and brown people, force them into labor camps in order to reinstate slavery just outright and in the open. And if you haven't read Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents by Octavia Butler, I suggest that you do. But the fact of the matter is that no one wants to do the labor that our folks, our undocumented folks, our immigrant communities do, because their work is hard and it's unrewarding. And they don't get paid a lot. They don't get health care. But they come in, they work hard, they get the job done, and then they go back home. And so Mauricio Sol, a seasonal worker, said 90% of the workforce at the farm is from Mexico, but it is becoming more difficult to find seasonal agriculture workers due to increased concerns about possible ICE raids. Because once again, said we all come on the H-2A visa program. So we come all here legally by the season, just for the season, and then we go back to Mexico. We usually get, they say, a lot of applications. We're not getting that many now because people are afraid of that. Even when they are legally here, they're getting arrested for no reason. And folks, because of that, we're about to enter a food shortage. And on top of a food crisis and food shortage, the prices are going to go through the roof for the food, limited food that we do have. Are we great yet? Anyone? How great are we? Anyone? So as I get out of here today, dear friends, as a reminder, one, Democracy-ish will be live tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, so do make sure to come back. But two, Saturday is No Kings. And I have said multiple times over, and I want to say it again. No Kings rally, this massive protest, is incredibly important. It is important to have a visual show of force. But what you do on October 19th is just as important. One day of marching is not going to disrupt this fascist regime. So while you are planning to go and show up and show out on the 18th, you also need to show up and show up out on the 19th, the 20th, and all the days and weeks and months and years ahead. You need to have a plan. How am I getting activated each and every single day? What am I doing other than waiting for the next big march? What am I doing with my time in between? How am I helping my community? How am I helping those in need? Am I going to local elementary schools that I know have a heavy undocumented population and linking arms with folks and protecting parents at pickups and drop-offs? Am I donating and volunteering at food pantries that I know that are going to be overrun with folks that are in need, that are losing their jobs, or federal workers that are currently furloughed or being fired? Am I doing phone banking and reaching out to my representatives and legislators? Am I deciding to run for office? Am I donating to people's campaigns? What else are you doing other than marching on one day? Because while it is important to have that visual of what I hope will be millions upon millions of people in this country and around the world saying that there are no thrones, no crowns, and no kings, what we do after October 18th is going to be more important. So I leave you with this little ditty from the Earth to Eve account. I loved it so much. It is an original song. And I saw it on Earth to Eve's Instagram, and I had to pull it for all of you today. I loved it so much. Y'all, if you are going to participate in the No Kings rally, make sure that you go to nokings.org. You can find your event. You can find a toolkit. Make sure that you stay safe. Make sure that people know where you are, that you have a contact list that is written out, that you have masks in case things get dangerous and there is tear gas. Make sure that you have hand sanitizer. Make sure that you have water. Make sure that you have some type of first aid kit with you. Keep yourself safe. Keep those around you safe, but show up in force, show out. And I will be back here with you all on Monday for the Danielle Moodie Show at 5 p.m. Eastern. And before I get out of here, let me shout out you wonderful super stickers and super thanks. Antifa's daughter, thank you so much. Janice, appreciate you. Vivian, thank you so much. Susan, as always, appreciate you. Amanda, Jen, Jackie, Blue Lady, thank you so much. Electron, every dollar counts. Ernst, as always, appreciate you. Dark Queen, thank you so much. Real Talk, Sherry, Got to Be Courtney, thank you so much. The Giant Paper Panda, Owen, Jimmy, Just Saying, and One Dork Pie. Appreciate you all so very much. This is independent media. Every dollar that you send my way allows me to continue doing the work that I do. And if you do not have the resources, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that little bell so that you never miss an episode of this show, and share on all your platforms with all your people, so that we can feed the algorithm fairy. And if you are watching on Substack and you have the ability to become a paid subscriber, please do consider doing so. But know that regardless, none of my content will ever go behind a paywall, because that is where critical thinking and democracy go to die. As always, dear friends, power to the people, and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these extraordinarily dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. I am back here tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern, with Wajahat Ali for Democracy-ish. See you then. Be well.